Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby, and today I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Peter from RavenPack. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Peter, listen, wonderful to have you in here. Come all the way over from Spain and where the business is based, but I know you're doing a lot of work here in London, over in New York as well. It's an international business, a business which is fascinating. I think you're right in a fascinating space. Been running for 20 odd years, which is, as we said before, coming on air isn't the most usual sort of people we come across on the show. So you'll be one of the most established businesses that we see within it. Which I think has got a whole load of things to unpack in that as well, because you'll have seen a whole lot of evolution over the last 20 years in terms of tech. I want to talk about data, which I know is a passion of yours, so we're not going to be shy on this discussion, and lots to get into in between that as well. So, but before we kick off, give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself and tell us a little bit about the company as well. Yeah,
my name is Peter Hafez. I'm the Chief Data Scientist at RavenPack. Been with the company for a little more than 16 years out of the 21 years that the company has been in existence. I have a background more from economics and finance, and have been working for banks and like Credit Suisse and Saxo Bank in Denmark. I'm Danish, so that's sort of where I grew up and where I've had some of my career. I did study in London at what is now known as Bayes Business School. It was Cass Business School, and I was there, and also worked a little bit here in the city. I got an opportunity to join RavenPack 16 years ago, and I had already been talking to a colleague about natural language processing and how that, when I was at Saxo Bank, and how that might be driving the future of investing, and I got quite intrigued about that. And when I got the opportunity to join RavenPack, then I took it and said, I want to invest here, part of my career. And
you joined at what sort of level or stage of the company? So five years in, and you're joining at what sort of level do you join it as? Because you've obviously become Chief Data Officer now. Yes. I imagine that's been a journey of yourself as well.
Yeah, I would say, we were very small at the time, and the company has been running a little bit more as an R&D shop. Mm-hmm. And had only recently started to approach the market and saying, hey, we want to solve cool things with NLP. Mm-hmm. And there was some interest on the Dow Jones side, actually, to try and take a product to market, because they had sort of gotten some insights into what was going on in Spain at RavenPack, and they found that very interesting. And when they went to market, they sort of said, hey, quants are the ones that are showing interest here. We are not necessarily, we don't really speak the quant language, so we need a quant at RavenPack to help us also communicate and sell this offering. So I was brought in as a sort of the first quant within the business, someone cool. with from sort of that sell side or buy side experience, right? And so that was really why I was brought in. We were 13 people at the time, and we have since grown quite substantially, and today we are more than 220 people.
Incredible. And quite a journey over 16 years, and it's also rare. We talked about the rareness of having a company of 20 years standing full stop in the space, but it's also even rarer to see someone who's got 16 years worth of service with a business. And also, to add another bit of rarity into it, to see someone at that sort of stage move on and be attracted. I think once you're in those sell-side quant roles, it can be quite tricky to move over and do it. What prompted that sort of decision-making for you?
For me, it was very natural. I really thought that this was where the space was going, and I was impressed with the team and what they had done. Yeah. So I saw the potential. And at the same time, I also sort of looked at, to be honest, to say, hey, how many opportunities in life do you have to be on the cutting edge of an industry? Yeah. And then doing that from Spain in Marbella.
That feels like, that's also a plus, isn't it? But that also feels like when you say that, how many times you get the opportunity to do that? That at that sort of stage must have been a really. I'm just trying to think back now into it. What was it? What was that space looking like 16 years ago? Tell me where we were in the evolution of that. I'm just trying to even date it back to where we were there. So we're in the early 2000s or so, yes. and remind me where we were in the whole data journey. I think at that sort of stage we were just starting to see it really kick off in the retail world. People were talking about it within the financial services sort of space. It was lagging quite a lot behind everywhere else at that sort of stage, which it seems crazy. It's only 16 years, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the whole space of natural language processing, if you go back to the early 2000s, it was really cutting edge, right? We started out in 2003. For those who may have read the book, The Man Who Solved the Markets, about Renaissance technologies, they started tapping around in NLP around 2001, according to the book, right? So we were really cutting edge at that level, and you could see that, and I would even argue that we were probably even more cutting edge than we thought we were. And it was very clear that the ones that were picking up were the more, sophisticated quantitative hedge funds out of New York. Europe wasn't even particularly moving at the time. I would say that Europe was probably 5 years behind New York. So I ended up spending a lot of my time around the tri-state area, speaking to hedge funds and so on, and trying to showcase the value of the data, why they should be looking at this. But I would say at that stage it was really just the most sophisticated funds. Otherwise it was more like a nice to have. And this was also even before we talked about alternative data. That concept didn't exist at the time. Right? And one of the things that really impressed me also coming in, it was also relatively early in my career. We were still in our 20s, right, when this kicked off, and we were able to get into all of the big brand names, and they wanted to hear what we had to say, right? And often we were sort of like, I don't really have, I'm still relatively junior, and they actually wanted me to come in and tell them some interesting things. And that was, of course, part of what was attractive in being in that space, that you were able to really, you really felt that you're bringing some value to even the most sophisticated funds. But it was very early stage, and it was mostly that ARB, statistical arbitrage, where you go long equities and short equities and try to rank your universes in the cross-section and figure out what companies are going to outperform other companies, not necessarily picking direction. But that was sort of the space that we were operating in. And then we could see as the market was maturing and data became a bigger and bigger thing, and people started talking about alternative data, it would also move into more quantitative asset management, also on the sell side with the bank. So it would go into market making, algorithmic trading, but also on the risk side or compliance within trade surveillance. They started all consuming news data, which is really, I would say, our claim to fame. That is that we are considered the pioneers and market leaders in finance in what you call news analytics.
That's incredible, isn't it? And to see that sort of thing and to be involved in that sort of journey and to go through all of that puts you in a brilliant position. I mean, and that's where the longevity, I'm sure, comes from at the same sort of stage. So let's talk about that evolution from there and being the pioneering sort of company into it. As we're seeing, even as we speak today, pioneering isn't an easy sort of play in technology. You see early adopters come in and from all over the world, there's someone doing something that you just don't know about. And this space seems to have been moving at a pace, particularly over the last couple of years, that we've never seen anything else move at. We always say that tech's moving at a pace there which hasn't been matched at any other stage. Right now it feels like this is a velocity that we've never seen before. So you guys are adapting to that. You guys have sort of reinvented and remolded as the technology's reinvented and remolded alongside that as well. Where's RavenPack sit today?
Yeah, so we have mostly been an analytics business, right? Selling low latency feeds into the quant community. And it is true, I mean, we are really seeing a second wave. I really feel that this space is getting revolutionized once more, and it has given me an opportunity to be on the cutting edge a second time in my career, right? So that's been very, very interesting. And we can definitely see that, I mean, we are moving more towards perhaps from the more quant side of things and getting much closer to discretionary investors. Because this wave of large language models it's really pushing to the democratization of big data, and that's really the space that we have always wanted to operate in. But the technology hasn't really quite been there. But with large language models, you now have a natural language interaction layer between the user and the data. Right? And now it's just a matter of what are the insights that the user wants. So you need to make insights available quickly and in a relevant way, and also in the quality that the user wants. And that's where sort of the space is moving towards that. Not just large language models. Large language models are becoming a little bit more interaction layer and a little bit more perhaps structuring on the fly and verification layers and stuff like that. But we are really moving more in the space of agents, and that's a space that we are operating in.
I think that, I mean, we spoke just before we came on air that 2 or 3 times recently I've been hearing about 2025 being the year of the agent. You mentioned it there as well. We've had it on the show a couple of times over the last week or 2 around that as well. Tell us what that means to you as a business, and what actually, not only what it means to you as a business, but also what it means for all of your customers and the potential behind that. Yeah.
No, agents I think are really, really important because that's where you actually are able to structure insights or serving it in a more relevant way. And there are different types of agents. And I would also say agents are being used more or less everywhere. And some of them are if you try to stay a little agnostic. It's not just about LLMs, it's also about rules, it's about general machine learning and so on. But I almost see an agent as a systematic process, a quant process really, in a wrapper, in a container. And the container is what you call an agent. And that container may have some components of large language models that sets it aside from a typical quant process, right? And that's what brings it into an agent world. Yeah. And then you have the large language model interaction layer between the user and these quant or systematic processes that helps you manipulate the data that is behind it. And of course the data is important, and that's the business that we are coming from, right? Yeah. You still need the data to feed these agents in order to bring the information forward. We recently launched a product called BigData.com, and BigData.com is like a research assistant. It's a mobile app, right? An app or a desktop app that you can interact and speak to data, but also with agents in between, such that you get better answers. But it's also we also have an enterprise solution where the information or data is delivered not as analytics, but as text, annotated text. With the 20 years of experience that we have in annotating documents, you get that,
isn't it?
And that is delivered via an API. So it's sort of also the retrieval system that can power and become an infrastructure of companies that are building apps.
So this is an amazing sort of piece, and I know you've sat on BigData.com for a little while.
Yes.
Why now?
Yeah, so we were lucky enough to acquire BigData.com and everything around that about 10 years ago. Yeah. And of course we knew that it was time. We knew that it needed something special. Yeah. Right. It needed something special, and it needed something that was a little bit more broad or retail focused, because of course we have been operating more in a space of institutional clients, very sophisticated clients, a smaller number, and a brand like that you need to use at large scale. Yeah. So we were waiting for that right idea, and we have always been thinking about democratization of big data, and we've sort of been sitting on this for 10 years to sort of say, when is the technology really ready to make that big play towards that democratization? And we felt with large language models that it was now. And we have been working on big data for the last 3-4 years, and recently launched it. And I will say, just as a little hint, it was also expensive to buy that domain name 10 years ago.
I imagine even more so now, right? So that's an amazing sort of story, I think, to sort of be sat there and having the patience of a business to sit there for 10 years, half the lifetime of the business, thinking when's the right sort of timing of it all. And that to me is a tremendous nod to the opportunity that we sort of sit at the moment within where larger language models sit at the moment. You sort of alluded to this earlier on as well, about user preference and people wanting the right sort of things and sort of moulding all the time in terms of how they want to do this. I've spoken a lot on this show about digital, our expectations having been raised in our personal life and in our business lives by everything just being as easy and as friction-free in terms of how we want to use it. I did a cursory look at everything on your business beforehand, and there are words there that littered throughout all of it which I think are absolutely the drivers of where businesses succeed at the moment. So that is efficiency gains. That is, quite frankly, cost reduction in terms of where it goes. That's friction removal, productivity. All of these sort of things sort of shriek out with what you're doing within this, and with, as you're saying, waiting 10 years for that sort of tech to be ready to be doing something else there. What does that actually mean for your customers?
Yeah, I mean, there's very clearly a strong interest in finance, in the sell side, but also on the buy side, on creating more efficiency and gain operational efficiency in some sense, because there is a continued pressure on margins, right? Fees are coming down, so you can't spend the same amount of money on producing your products as a financial institution. So you're always
and costs are going up. Internal costs at the same time.
Exactly. So the more you can automate and have AI or machine learning help you become more efficient, that's attractive. And that's also exactly where this space of agents operate, and a lot of the work that we're doing in the data science team that I'm running at RavenPack, we are building out these workflows that try to emulate, let's say, how a financial analyst might think. And it's not saying that you are necessarily trying to replace all the financial analysts, but you're making each of the financial analysts that you have on staff more efficient.
Exactly right?
So and what is driving decision making? It's information. Right? And understanding and contrasting information. What is public information saying? What, news, for instance, what are filings saying? What are earnings call? What is being said on an earnings call? What is our internal document saying? How can I upload that to big data and start talking to that and orchestrating a chain of thought process to make information retrieval more efficient. So for instance, one of the things that we are operating with is how can we reduce the human interaction layer as much as possible in order to achieve the end goal that you're after. So we are playing around with, for instance, a workflow that would create a mind map and saying, I care about companies that talk about AI solutions, right, for operational efficiency or revenue generation. Give me a list of companies that deal in that space, that are investing in that space. And what are they investing in? So we would create what we call a mind map and saying, what is the definition? And this is happening automatically just with that seed from the user of AI solutions, and saying a seed into saying, what does AI solutions even mean? So you can use a large language model to say, come up with a taxonomy for me. So AI solutions may be machine learning applications, it may be natural language processing, it may be robotic processes and stuff like that, right? So, and within that, it could be predictive maintenance, it could be sentiment analysis, it could be whatever. And a large language model is able to give you that framework. And you're also able to perhaps create, and that's how financial analysts typically would think, starting out with what does it even mean, what is the definition of what I'm interested in trying to solve, right? And then we can have a large language model to say, one of the things that a large language model is really good at is making stuff up, right? So it's really good at generating synthetic data. So each of these topics within the taxonomy can be represented by a little, what we call a node summary, right? So give me 20 sentences that could talk about predictive maintenance, right? Then you can go to big data and use the retrieval system and say, now I can do a semantic search and say, give me sentences that are similar to these questions that I'm talking about. And now it starts to extract or retrieve content for you at large scale from what is being said, let's say, in an earnings call, because you can direct it to the content you want. And now you can use a large language model and the context of the taxonomy and saying, are you really applying predictive maintenance or not? Are you really doing sentiment analysis or not? So you use a large language model as a verification layer. And now you suddenly have structured the data on the fly, because you basically get zeros and ones. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And now you can visualize it and say, well, 16% of companies that talk about AI solutions are actually implementing chatbots. 14% are looking at predictive maintenance and so on. And then you can take a step further, saying, what is an analyst then interested in? KPIs and financial materiality. Because we can actually say what are being implemented from an AI solutions perspective per industry. And now we say, for this industry, for predictive maintenance, for instance, for airlines, what are the 10 KPIs that I should care about? And now you can do a second retrieval and extract whenever there is a document or, in the earnings call, in news or wherever, where this company is talking about how it's impacting their KPIs, and then you can make a link back to financial materiality. So now you can think about that it's an automation of how a financial analyst might think about it, and you just have to provide a one seed question, and then everything is sort of being delivered to you.
It's so cool. I mean, you'll have seen me smiling all the way through listening to you talk like that, because I've been wondering, I've been fascinated about this sort of space for quite a while, and I've been enjoying the conversations I've been having with people on the show, with clients, customers, all sorts of different bits and pieces. And I've been thinking about what is so exciting / fascinating about this space. And I think I've just got it from that conversation and listening to you speak about it, because it's just become such a great intellectual conversation and thought process around what you're doing, doesn't it? And I think what tech's done so far before is saying, right, here's a problem, let's work out how we can solve it. But this is about thinking in a completely different way about processes and what can we do with it. And the intellectual stimulus of people in who've had your career, people with your background, to be able to look at all of these sort of things and just keep on working out and keep on thinking and keep on building out the whole piece, it's just this fascinating stage of growth of the whole concept, isn't it? And it keeps on growing and it keeps on growing and it keeps on growing.
Yeah.
And that to me is what gives this sort of lease of life to people who are just incredibly excited about the potential about what can happen in this space, and the questions that we can solve, and the questions we can ask, the problems we can solve, where it can come out of it. I think it's just brilliant to listen to.
Yeah, I mean it's a very, very exciting space to be in, and with large language models, I really think that data scientists are getting very empowered. You can do some really cool things much faster than you could before.
Yeah.
Right? And that really excites me. I feel like I am, being revived and getting excited about, really excited about the space. Of course, it's an exciting space. It's always been an exciting space, but I've been in it for a long time, and you can really see that there's a new wave that is really getting your creative juices going again, right?
Yeah.
And it's a very fun space to be in, and you keep on getting ideas and are learning new, attractive way. I really feel that large language models have empowered that whole process of creating more operational efficiency. And I think also what's interesting for financial analysts is that as you are trying to automate or become more efficient, you're also rethinking your own process, right? And saying, can I actually put more of a system behind it? Because as you are trying to optimize and automate things, you have to define what the steps are.
Yeah.
And I think that's just being a quant. I think it's always I like to put things in processes, right? So I think it's just a good exercise to do for everybody.
So let's go back to a conversation I had, and apologies for people who watched the last show, because this will come concurrently to it, and it carries on the same sort of theme. But we were I was talking in that show about the internet, and this came back to something that was in the Sunday Times a couple of weeks ago. And the Sunday Times sort of heralded the fact that the internet had no real impact on productivity, despite its transformational sort of, transformation to the world, both business and personal and everything else in between, and what the internet's become over the last 30 years or so. But if we look at that as well and say, right, how can, all of this sort of area, which should have AI in general, have the same sort of impact or the impact in terms of efficiency that we've been talking about. When we're talking about all of these increasing pressures, it needs an answer, right? When you've got margin shrinking, costs increasing, there's a pressure point that something needs to change in the process to allow that to happen. AI looks like it can be the answer to all of that sort of thing, and in its broad term. And conversations like the ones we're having are where that sort of comes into it. But when you look at global productivity figures not improving and let's take the UK as for example, the productivity over 10 years has been almost non-existent. Is this somewhere now where we start to see that productivity shift because of the work that people like you are doing at the moment?
I think yes, there is this eureka moment in some sense of saying, we are definitely getting more attention across all industries about the possibilities of applying AI, and I think ChatGPT really pushed to that. I sort of say that it moved from individual users into boardrooms, and often if you want to have massive change, you need the support of the boardrooms, because they're the ones that will write the check or support or sponsor the writing of checks, right? So there's a lot of investments that are going into this space of AI, and I think that that's a very, very positive thing. Of course, there will always be exaggeration and bubbles and all of these sort of things, and it's also therefore important that we don't get into the space of disillusionment and so on. But there is real practical use cases that can be solved with AI, and that's really what I find most exciting. I'm most excited about solving actual use cases, and that's what we're doing in my team. But on the comment of the internet, I think the internet, if we go back, it is important, especially in an information-driven business, a data-driven business. Without the internet, what data would we have available?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, it's really a means of collecting data, and even though we are talking about large language models and NLP and so on, we still have to, and AI, you still have to remember it's data-driven. You need data to train on, and you also need data to consume on a continuous basis. So data is still king, right? But now you just have technology that makes information and more easily available, also for people that don't know how to program in Python. You will serve a natural language interaction layer where you can just chat away or with it, right?
I think that evolution of data is so important within it. I was thinking as you were talking, and about 18 months ago I hosted a panel in New York, and the title was, if data's the new oil, how ready is your engine? And I think how ready your engine is the key part of that. How clean, we all know the adage of good data in, good data out, bad data in, bad data out. And I think that's that to me becomes the sort of critical part of it. I think people are developing that sort of thing and thinking a lot more about data. And that is a nice segue into the whole thing about use cases, and particularly in financial services markets, because there has been hype about LLM, there's been hype about NLP, there's been hype about AI, there's been all of this sort of noise has come in there. And I think the issue has been is this is a sector, the financial services markets has been a sector which has always been resistant to real change for obvious reasons, regulation, everything else in between it. So we see this great opportunity, and this is again a common thing that I say on the show, is that in other areas, other sectors, there are greater advances that have been happening within data as a whole. This to me feels like there's use cases that are now starting to come with far more velocity, and when they come with this sort of velocity, with the sort of gains that we're talking about, it is something that simply can't be ignored. So you've got some interesting things where your sort of use cases almost happen internally as well as externally within your team, your data science team. But tell us about use cases and where we sit with that at the moment.
I agree for sure. I mean, finance is a little different in many ways from other industries. Compliance is a heavy thing,
Absolutely.
But you also often see that if the opportunity is big enough, things will happen. I mean, I just looking back, something like cloud computing. I mean, when that first came about, I was sort of like saying, no, there's no way that banks and so on will start using that.
It took them a lot of nudging, didn't it?
All of the conversations around how can we, it has to be on-prem, it has to be, but today, I mean, there are areas of the bank that are very, very heavy users of
the pandemic
cloud.
Really helped with that, didn't it?
But it's also like, if you don't do it, I mean, you will be at a disadvantage against competitors, and when you have that conviction also at the boardrooms, and having that support that it's some place we have to go, then you're also challenging and perhaps interacting with regulators a little more and saying, how can we make it work? And the same with AI, and saying, if you still want to have financial institutions in the future, right? And they're able to deliver solutions at competitive cost and stuff like that, right? At attractive price points. You have to think about how can we use AI. So let's instead move regulation and so on towards something that is accommodating future development as opposed to hindering the adoption of these things. And that's why you talk about, US innovating, China replicating, and Europe perhaps regulating more, right? And regulation is important, but you also have to regulate in a way such that you are not hindering too much innovation.
Yeah.
But in terms of use cases, what are we seeing from the marketplace? I mean, if you look at the more traditional side of RavenPack, where we were delivering analytics, as I mentioned, it is very much about alpha generation and understanding, what is the sentiment around particular names, what is the sentiment for particular topics that you care about, right? So we track anything from economic, business-related news, events, political, societal, and environmental sentiment, right? So it could be like an ESG use case, or it could be trading commodities, or it could be trading FX, and so on in different ways. And that has sort of evolved. But what we're seeing today, if we go more in the LLM space, there's more pickup from these discretionary investors or more quantamental investors, where there is a human in the loop, where it is about trying to get information in front of a human that will make the final decision. It's more about narratives, it's more about storytelling and surfacing information that you, at the end of the day, will make a human decision on. It's not so much about how can I backtest a strategy to see if there's a signal historically. It's more about, I believe this insight will drive prices going forward, and I will make human judgment on that, not a statistical judgment, historical statistical judgment. So that's why it's a little bit more attractive on the discretionary side. And it's also where the quants are a little bit more skeptical, because they are really driving their decision making based on statistical historical results, right? A back test. And large language models have the disadvantage that they are trained up until very, very recently. So it's like a knowledge bank. They know everything. That's really the idea, and that's why we talk about larger and larger and larger models. They basically encode the knowledge base within the large language model, so it knows everything, and it knows all of the connections between everything, right? And by knowing, I mean, it's a probabilistic engine, so it doesn't really know, but the information is contained in there. And when you prompt, you're just trying to figure out where within the grid of information is the relevant information for me. So that's why prompting is so important, saying, I can't search the entire space in surfacing the information for me, so please prompt me and direct me where I should go more locally and say, this is the relevant content for you, right? But they contain everything in there. And that's a problem actually for quants, because when you ask a question and they say, what about this? How did that look like in 2010? It will know the future outcome of that. So for instance, if I talk to a large language model about a lawsuit that took place in 2010 or just kicked off in 2010, it will know the outcome, let's say 5, 6, 7 years later perhaps. So it will say, is this good or bad for the company? Well, it was good because I know already that they won this lawsuit. So you can't create a proper backtest without look-ahead bias. You have to be very careful about how you do it. So in terms of use cases, we're seeing a little less on the quant side, but there are use cases there that are relevant about further information extraction.
And becoming more and more so as well.
It's more about the discretionary use cases, because they care more about the future than they care about, getting verification in a backtest. They get verification with domain expertise of a human, right? So the use cases are more there.
And that's where it becomes, as we talked about right at the very start, this democratizing.
Yes.
And that creates a lot of opportunity, doesn't it?
Yes. So it would be anything from, we have interest around, I described a chain of thought agent or workflow before. We also see a lot of interest around thematic investing and really understanding exposures to themes. So what companies have or lack pricing power. And then you can use large language models for that. The process would be quite similar. Start with the question, go to a retrieval system. That's, again, big data. Of course, I have to promote it a little bit here. So you can go to big data, retrieve the content you want, and then use the large language models to verify.
Yeah.
To clean it up, to make it a higher precision data point. And now you can say, okay, this company has exposure to this theme. And there could be many themes that you can think about.
And tell me about the reception of this, because as you say, bigdata.com's out there. It's something which has been sat on. It's the 2.0 of the business, so to speak. What's been the reception you've had so far on it?
Yeah. We've had very, very strong reception, both on the app side, right? Because people who are interested in just chatting or having a research assistant, an AI assistant in front of you to speak to both structured and unstructured data. So you can sort of say, which companies have the greatest hiring growth? Please rank them for this sector or something like that. Or what are the skills?
I've seen some of that on the LinkedIn page. You've done some work around that.
Exactly. You can start to ask, who are hiring for generative AI? Please rank them by sector. Please create a plot and see what is the hiring growth for this particular skill over time. And everything is by asking questions in natural language, and then the system can sort of give you these insights. So there's been good reception there. At the same time, we're also seeing very, very good reception for our enterprise solution on the API side. And it's relatively new, right? We launched this in September, and we already have several clients that are now subscribing to this new product, and it's really trying to make it easy for people to get started. Instead of focusing on building infrastructure, focusing on onboarding data, normalizing data, maintaining a knowledge graph of entities, and so on, loading that into vector stores, optimizing retrieval, and all of that. You can instead say, if you are a discretionary fund that wants to tap into this space, and you have 2 or 3 data scientists sitting with you, if you ask them to build it all, you won't see any output from them for the next couple of years. And that's when you go into disillusionment, because I hired these super quants or super data scientists. They should start having an impact on my business from day one, right? So now these smaller teams can't get the investments needed because they're not delivering business value. But instead, if you sort of say, no, we don't need to do this part, big data can come in and become your infrastructure, you can focus on the use case, solve the actual problems, you can get a massive gold star and get more money allocated to your team, and then you can start always to build out more infrastructure or whatever you want from that point.
Everyone wins.
Exactly.
So if people want, I could speak about this for ages. I know you could, you could as well. So let's wrap it and start to wrap it up a little bit here now. 2 things. Tell me a little bit about what 2025 looks like for the company, and then tell us how people who've watched this, and I know that I know the audience, I know people are going to love this sort of thing. What you've talked about here is just on the tip of everyone's tongue at the moment. It's really exciting to have this. I've loved this show. Tell people how they can get in touch with you and where they should find out a little bit more. So tell me about 2025. What's it look like?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's a space that keeps on evolving, and so will we. I mean, we will, from a data perspective, we are building a content store, right, where we are adding more and more data sets in there, because data is still key for these processes, right? And having it in a normalized fashion. So data is a big thing in terms of data breadth. We're also increasing the amount of historical content that you can have available, so that you can look at longer term trends. And we have, as a business, 20 years of millisecond timestamp data, right? Having been around for so long.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, and we are also expanding or evolving our toolkits that help users interact more easily with our API. So we are building a little chat user case for people who want to build their own chat, but being powered by big data. We're also building out these chain of thought agents. So we are building function libraries such that when you, as a user, wants to build a workflow, we already have, let's say, 90% of the components that could build that workflow off the shelf for you, and then you can focus on the 10% that makes it yours, right? So we are building more tools, and then of course, as a front end, as big data as an app, today what you are experiencing is that it's very much a what you would call a pull interaction, right? So you go and ask a question, you get an answer. If you want more information, you go and ask another question, And if I want to know the same or have an update on this information tomorrow, I have to go and ask the same question again as I did the day before. So the space is moving towards, and this is big data as well, the space is moving towards more push, that you can go in, ask a question, and now you can subscribe. And then saying, I will now give you a daily digest, I will now give you a newsletter, I will now give you, and you can sort of start customizing the repeated insight that you want, or tracking portfolios and saying, I care about this watch list, here's what you should know about your watch list. So a lot of stuff happening.
It's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah,
For sure.
And just to say, what should you do if you are excited about what you've heard today? I mean, go to bigdata.com or even also ravenpack.com, but bigdata.com, and there should be an opportunity to download an app right now. There's free access. If you want access to the enterprise solution with the API, do reach out to us on bigdata.com, and we're happy to have a conversation with you.
I think the content you guys put out as well through the RavenPack LinkedIn page is well worth following as well for people who are interested in this. There's some really good stuff in there that you can dive through, and I lost a fair amount of time going through or gained it, as the case may be, from it. So look, Peter, I've loved this conversation. I think it's just such an interesting space. I love seeing people on this show who are as passionate as you are about what's happening in the marketplace at the moment. It makes me really excited about where the market moves further forward as well. So thank you so much for coming in and sharing it all with us today. And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.